What would you sacrifice to save someone you love? For Elena Reyes, the answer was simple: anything. But when she wakes up to discover she's unknowingly signed away her soul in a language no human should comprehend, she's thrust into a world hidden behind our reality, a world of ancient contracts written in the language of creation itself. Now, hunted by beings with shifting faces and shadowed wings, Elena's only protection is Dominic, a Nephilim enforcer with eyes that change color with his, moods and skin that burns cold then blazes hot at his touch. He was sent to collect her debt, but something about her calls to both halves of his divided nature. As the deadline approaches, Elena must uncover the truth about what she truly is, and why supernatural forces fear her existence enough to erase her from reality itself. The contract wasn't just about healing your sister, Dominic whispers, his touch leaving crystalline patterns beneath her skin. It was designed to take you entirely, because you shouldn't exist as you are. The contract was in her handwriting, but Elena Reyes had no memory of signing it. She stared at the elegant strokes of ink, her fingertips hovering inches above the parchment that smelled of smoke and winter. The characters weren't in any language she recognized, and she knew 17. Yet somehow, the signature at the bottom was unmistakably hers, down to the peculiar way she crossed the final S in Reyes. When did I write this? Her voice sounded hollow in the dim light of her apartment's kitchen, where bills covered every surface. Medical invoices, payment plans, collection notices. The table lamp flickered, casting her shadow against the wall, except it moved a half second after she did. The mysterious parchment had been waiting in her mailbox, wrapped in simple brown paper with no return address. Just her name, written in what appeared to be her own hand. Elena's phone vibrated. St. Mary's Hospital. Again. She closed her eyes, breathed, answered. Ms. Reyes, your payment is 3 weeks overdue. Without immediate resolution, we'll need to discuss alternative care options for Lucia. Alternative care options. The polite way of saying they'd stop her sister's treatment. Elena's fingers curled around the edge of the table. I'll have it by tomorrow, she lied, watching her shadow on the wall contort into a shape that wasn't hers. I promise. After hanging up, she stumbled to the bathroom, her head pounding with the A. Beginning of another episode. The mirror showed dark circles under her eyes. 25 years old, looking 40. She splashed cold water on her face, and when she looked up, unfamiliar symbols were appearing on her forearm, rising to the surface of her skin like ink through paper. The same symbols from the contract. Elena blinked, and they were gone. Just like all the other times she'd imagined things after her sleepwalking episodes. But the contract on her kitchen table was real. Too real. Her phone chimed. A text from an unknown number. Need a translator for ancient text. Pays $50,000. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Meridian Coffee, downtown. Bring the contract. $50,000. Enough for 3 months of Lucia's treatment. She stared at her phone until the screen went black, reflecting her face and, for just a moment, someone else's eyes looking back. The man sitting at the corner table wasn't what Elena expected. No tweed jacket or scholarly spectacles. Instead, he wore a simple black coat that somehow made him look both approachable and dangerous. But what caught her attention was how utterly still he sat. Not the stillness of someone waiting, but the stillness of someone who had forgotten how to pretend to be human. Elena Reyes? His voice carried an accent she couldn't place, as if he'd learned English from everywhere and nowhere at once. She nodded, clutching her messenger bag containing the contract. Dominic. He didn't offer a last name. I appreciate you coming. She sat across from him, her skin prickled. The cafe felt suddenly 10 degrees colder, though no one else seemed to notice. She wrapped her fingers around her coffee cup for warmth. You have a reputation for translating obscure languages, he said, watching her with unsettling intensity. Dead languages. Lost languages. I specialize in ancient Semitic dialects and pre-colonial indigenous scripts. She straightened her shoulders, finding comfort in professional territory. What exactly is the text you need translated? His mouth curved slightly. I believe you already have it. The air between them seemed to compress. The contract, he said softly, that appeared in your possession yesterday. The coffee cup under her fingers went from freezing to scalding in an instant. She jerked her hands away, but there were no burns, no spilled liquid. Just Dominic watching her, his expression unreadable. How do you know about that? The words scraped her throat. Because I've been looking for someone who can translate it for a very long time. He leaned forward, and the overhead light caught his eyes. One moment deep brown, the next reflecting blue, then amber. And for someone with your particular abilities, even longer. Elena's heart hammered. The sounds of the cafe dimmed. Around Dominic's silhouette, the air seemed to waver like heat rising from asphalt. I don't know what you're talking about. She started to rise. I should go. His hand shot out, catching her wrist. Cold, freezing cold, then burning hot, cycling between extremes so quickly she gasped. Not painful, but impossible. You've been writing in your sleep, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried perfectly through the cafe noise. Waking up with symbols on your skin, hearing voices in languages you've never studied. The truth of his words froze her in place. How? The contract in your bag isn't just any document. It's written in the original language. His grip softened, but the temperature fluctuations continued. And you, Elena Reyes, somehow signed it, which should be impossible. She stared at the point where his fingers circled her wrist. Through his skin, she could see what looked like crystalline patterns forming and dissolving, like ice forming and fire consuming it in continuous cycles. What are you? The question escaped before she could stop it. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Someone who can help you understand what you've done. Someone who can help. Your sister. Lucia's face flashed in Elena's mind, pale against hospital sheets, tubes and monitors, 17 years old and running out of time. What do you mean, help my sister? The contract you signed has terms. He released her wrist, leaving behind a faint pattern like frost and ash. Your signature activated something. I can help you navigate the consequences, but I need to understand exactly what you agreed to. The cafe lights flickered, and in that brief darkness, Elena saw Dominic's shadow on the wall behind him. It had wings, massive, broken things that seemed to be made of both light and darkness. When the light stabilized, his shadow was normal again. $50,000, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. For translation services. Yes. He nodded. With potential for more, depending on what we discover. Her phone vibrated. St. Mary's again. Elena knew without looking what they'd say. Lucia's treatment was working, but they couldn't continue without payment. When do we start? She asked. Dominic's eyes flickered between colors again as he smiled. We already have. He reached across the table, turning her wrist over to reveal symbols now clearly visible on her skin. Symbols that matched the first line of the contract. You've been working for my employer for some time now, Elena. You just didn't know it. Elena's apartment felt like a stranger's home when she returned that evening. The bills still covered the kitchen table, but they seemed trivial now. Paper threats from a world that suddenly felt less real than the contract burning in her messenger bag. She placed the parchment on her desk, weighed down by the check Dominic had given her. $50,000. Real money from an impossible encounter. She'd already deposited it. Watched the bank teller's eyes widen as she processed the amount. By morning, Lucia's treatment would be secured for 3 more months. The symbols on Elena's skin had faded during her walk home, but their memory remained. A phantom sensation like frost and fire. She traced where Dominic's fingers had circled her wrist. The skin looked normal, but felt wrong somehow. Different, as if the molecular structure had been permanently altered. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dominic. Begin tonight. Watch yourself sleep. Elena frowned at the cryptic message. Watch herself sleep? How was that possible? Another text followed. Set up your laptop camera. Record. You'll see. A chill ran through her body. Elena had always dismissed her sleepwalking episodes as stress-induced, despite waking up with unexplained ink stains on her fingers and strange symbols occasionally appearing on her skin. Her doctor had suggested anxiety medication. Her therapist had recommended dream journaling. Neither had suggested surveillance. Elena positioned her laptop on the dresser facing her bed, started the recording program, and changed into her sleep clothes. As she brushed her teeth, she studied her reflection. Same brown eyes, same sharp cheekbones inherited from her Mexican father, same wavy black hair from her Brazilian mother. But something felt altered beneath the skin, as if Dominic's touch had awakened something dormant. You're being dramatic, she told her reflection. He's just a client, a strange one, but still. But clients didn't know about symbols appearing on your skin. They didn't have shadows that transformed into broken wings. And they certainly didn't make the you. Air temperature fluctuate with a touch. Elena climbed into bed, acutely aware of the camera's unblinking eye. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion eventually pulled her under. The recording showed a different Elena. She watched the video the next morning with her heart in her throat. On screen, her sleeping form sat upright at exactly 3:17 a.m. Her eyes remained closed, but her movements were precise. Nothing like the clumsy fumbling of a sleepwalker. Screen Elena reached for a notebook on the nightstand, one that hadn't been there when she went to bed. From nowhere, she produced a pen and began writing, her hand moving with fluid, confident strokes. But what made Elena's coffee cup slip from her fingers was the voice. Her mouth was moving, speaking words that weren't English, weren't Spanish or Portuguese or any of the 17 languages she knew. The sound had a quality that made her teeth ache. Syllables that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, overlapping and echoing. The recording's audio couldn't fully capture it. The sound warped, creating static and strange harmonics, as if her computer was struggling to process whatever her sleeping self was saying. For 23 minutes, she wrote and spoke in this impossible language. Then, with the same unnerving precision, she returned the notebook to the nightstand, laid back down, and became still. Elena scrambled to her bedroom. The notebook was there, though she had no memory of owning it. Inside were pages filled with the same symbols from the contract, written in her handwriting but completely foreign to her waking mind. Her phone rang. Dominic. Did you watch? His voice carried that same untraceable accent. What is happening to me? Elena demanded, her fingers trembling against the phone. You're remembering a language your conscious mind can't access. A pause. I need to see the notebook. I'll be at your apartment in 20 minutes. No, I have to visit my sister this morning. St. Mary's, the East Wing. The words tumbled out before she could consider the wisdom of sharing this information. I'll meet you there. 1 o'clock. Cafeteria. He hung up before she could argue. St. Mary's smelled of antiseptic and false cheer. Elena had grown to hate the bright motivational posters lining the halls of the oncology ward. But today, with Lucia's treatment secured for 3 more months, the journey to room 417 felt lighter. Lucia was sitting up in bed, her once thick black hair now a fine shadow across her scalp. At 17, she looked both younger and older than her age, her face holding the roundness of childhood, but her eyes carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much suffering. They called this morning, Lucia said, without preamble. Said the payment came through. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, taking her sister's thin hand. I got a new translation contract. A big one. Lucia's eyebrow arched. A gesture so familiar it made Elena's heart ache. Must be some document. Ancient Sumerian tax returns? Something like that. Elena forced a smile. How are you feeling today? Like I might actually have a future. Lucia's eyes, so similar to Elena's own, studied her sister's face. But you look terrible. Are the episodes getting worse? Elena looked away. She'd never been able to hide anything from Lucia. I'm fine, just working hard. She squeezed Lucia's hand. The doctor said your numbers are improving. Don't change the subject. You're having those sleep things again, aren't you? The weird writing? Lucia's gaze dropped to Elena's wrist, where the faintest outline of symbols still lingered. Before Elena could answer, she felt it. A drop in temperature that made her breath cloud in the climate-controlled hospital room. She didn't need to turn around to know Dominic had entered. Lucia's widening eyes confirmed it. Ms. Reyes. His voice was formal, careful. I apologize for the intrusion. Your colleague mentioned I might find you here. Elena turned. Dominic stood in the doorway, holding a small arrangement of white lilies. He wore the same black coat, but somehow looked different in the fluorescent hospital lighting, more solid, more present. His eyes were a steady brown today, giving no hint of their color-shifting quality. You must be Lucia, he said, stepping forward to place the flowers on the side table. Your sister speaks highly of you. Lucia's mouth opened slightly, her gaze tracking Dominic with undisguised curiosity. Really? That's funny, because she's never mentioned you. The temperature in the room fluctuated, warm, then cold, then normal. Elena felt the hairs on her arms rise. We've only recently begun working together, Dominic replied smoothly, on a rather specialized translation project. Lucia's eyes narrowed. You don't look like the academic type. A smile touched Dominic's mouth. Not all valuable texts are found in universities, Lucia. Elena stood abruptly. I need to speak with my colleague about the project. I'll be right back. In the hallway, Elena rounded on Dominic. What are you doing here? We said cafeteria. Plans changed. His voice lowered, his gaze intense. There's someone watching your sister's room. Someone who shouldn't be able to see me. What are you talking about? The man in scrubs at the nurse's station. He's not hospital staff. He's looking for you. Or more specifically, for what you're carrying. His eyes flicked to her bag, where the notebook rested. We need to leave. Now. Elena glanced toward the nurse's station. A man in blue scrubs was watching them, his posture too rigid for casual observation. As their eyes met, she noticed something wrong about his face, as if his features were slightly misaligned, a poorly constructed mask. Who is he? She whispered. Someone who collects debts of a different nature than mine. Dominic's hand found the small of her back, guiding her toward the emergency stairs. Your sister will be safe. He's not interested in her. How can you be sure? Because she hasn't signed anything. As they pushed through the door to the stairwell, Elena looked back. The man in scrubs was following, his movements too fluid, too precise. And behind him, just for a moment, she saw what looked like a shadow detaching from the wall, flowing after them like living darkness. Dominic, she whispered, her voice catching. What exactly did I sign? His eyes shifted then, brown to blue to amber and back. Again. A contract that wasn't meant for humans, and they've come to collect. They took the stairs 3 at a time, Elena's breath coming in sharp gasps as they descended. The stairwell temperature plummeted with each floor they passed, frost crystallizing on the metal railings where Dominic's fingers brushed. We need to get to the parking garage, he said, voice unnaturally calm for someone running. My car. Northeast corner. Elena stumbled on the landing, her messenger bag swinging wildly. What about Lucia? If I just disappear? Your sister's treatment is paid for. She'll be monitored. That's part of our arrangement. Dominic's hand closed around her elbow to steady her, and Elena felt that impossible sensation again. Ice forming beneath his palm, then melting in a rush of heat that never quite burned. The door to the parking level burst open before they reached it, flying off its hinges with a sound like tearing cloth. The man in scrubs stood in the doorway, but his face, Elena's. Mind struggled to process what she was seeing. His features shifted continuously, as if multiple faces were fighting for control beneath his skin. "Contract breach," the figure said in a voice that echoed strangely, as if speaking from inside a cathedral. "Return the signatory." Dominic pushed Elena behind him. "She's under my authority now. The contract was properly executed." The figure's neck elongated unnaturally as he tilted his head. "Nephilim, you have no jurisdiction here." The word struck Elena like a physical blow. Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of angels and humans from ancient texts. Her academic mind tried to process this information even as adrenaline flooded her system. "I have every jurisdiction," Dominic replied. And for the first time, Elena heard something dangerous in his voice, a dual tone that seemed to speak two words simultaneously. She signed in blood and breath. The terms are clear. The figure took a step forward, its movements jerky, like a marionette, with tangled strings. The shadows behind it thickened, taking shapes with too many angles. "Your employer overreaches. The girl was not informed. The contract is void." Dominic's posture shifted, his shoulders broadening subtly. The air around him shimmered, hot and cold in rapid alternation. "You know the laws, Collector. Intent matters less than the signature. The mark is made." Elena's wrist burned where the symbols had appeared. She watched in horror as they reappeared now, glowing faintly. Through her sleeve, responding to the tension in the air, the figure, the Collector, hissed, a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. "Then we take this to arbitration." "Agreed. But until then, she remains under my protection." Dominic's voice carried a finality that seemed to physically push against the Collector, making it step back involuntarily. The Collector's face settled momentarily into an almost human expression of cold calculation. 2 weeks. Prepare your case." Its gaze shifted to Elena, and explain to your signatory what she has truly surrendered. The figure backed away, its form growing indistinct around the edges until it seemed to fold into the shadows of the stairwell. The temperature gradually returned to normal. Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. What the hell was that? "That," Dominic said, turning to face her, "was a collector. They enforce supernatural contracts when parties attempt to renegotiate." "Supernatural contracts," Elena repeated, the words feeling absurd in her mouth. "And you called yourself a Nephilim, like from the Book of Genesis?" "That's the simplified version humans recorded, yes." He guided her toward a sleek black car in the corner of the garage. "We need to move. He's gone for now, but others will come." Elena planted her feet. "I'm not going anywhere until you explain what's happening. What did I sign? What does it have to do with Lucia's recovery? And what did he mean by what I've surrendered?" Dominic's eyes cycled through colors again, blue to amber to brown, before settling. The pattern she'd first noticed on his skin when he touched her was more visible now, like fractal ice crystals forming and melting across his hands. "The contract you signed," he said carefully, "is a soul bond. In exchange for your sister's complete recovery, you pledged something of equal value." The world seemed to tilt beneath Elena's feet. "My soul? That's not possible. That's not real." "No, not your soul, exactly. Something more specific." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "Your linguistic gift. The ability that lets you understand and translate languages no human should comprehend." Elena shook her head. "I don't have that gift. I studied languages. I worked for them. You studied because something in you already knew. Haven't you ever wondered why you can pick up dead languages when others struggle? How you instinctively understand grammatical structures you've never seen?" He stepped closer. Your conscious mind learned through study, but your soul already knew. That's what you offered, the part of you that speaks the original language in your sleep. The notebook in her bag felt suddenly heavier. Why would anyone want that? Dominic's expression darkened. Because the original language has power. It's the language of creation itself. Those who speak it can bind realities, forge connections between realms. Most humans can't comprehend it, let alone speak it. But I can. Yes, without training, without awareness. But you can. His hand moved toward her face, stopping just short of touching her cheek. That makes you extraordinarily valuable. And in danger. Elena stepped back, mind racing. So I accidentally signed away this ability for Lucia's life. And now you've been sent to collect it? I was sent to assess whether you were truly capable of what the contract promised. His voice softened. I didn't expect to find someone who speaks it so fluently. Or someone who had no idea what they were signing. The parking garage lights flickered, casting strange shadows. Elena felt the weight of everything pressing down. Lucia's illness, the strange symbols on her skin, the collector's impossible face, Dominic's revelation. What happens now? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Now we prepare for arbitration. The collector has called for a formal review of the contract. It's unusual. These agreements are typically straightforward. And if they rule the contract is valid? Something flashed across Dominic's face. Regret, perhaps. Then I complete my assignment. I take what you promised. And how exactly do you take a linguistic ability from someone? His silence was answer enough. You can't just extract it, can you? Elena pressed, a cold certainty forming. You'd have to take me. All of me. Dominic looked away. The gift is intrinsic to who you are. Removing it would fundamentally alter you at best. At worst, I'd die, she finished. The car keys in Dominic's hand trembled slightly. It was such a human gesture that Elena felt a bizarre moment of connection with this being who wasn't fully angel or human. I won't let that happen, he said finally. There's another way. There's always another path in these contracts, if you know how to read between the lines. Is that why you need me to translate it? To find the loophole? His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Elena saw something ancient and weary in them. Loneliness that spanned centuries. Yes, because I think you're the only one who can truly understand what you wrote that night. He opened the car door. But we need to go somewhere safe first. Somewhere they can't follow easily. Elena thought of Lucia in her hospital bed, believing her sister had simply found a lucrative translation job. She thought of the symbols that appeared on her skin without her knowledge, of her voice speaking words she didn't understand while she slept. Will I see my sister again? If we succeed, yes. Dominic held her gaze. If we fail, it won't matter. Elena got into the car, the notebook heavy in her lap. As they pulled away from the hospital, she watched frost patterns form and dissolve on the inside of the windows with each breath Dominic took. You said our arrangement earlier, about Lucia's treatment being paid for, she said suddenly. What did you mean? Dominic kept his eyes on the road, but his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I made certain your payment went directly to secure her care, regardless of what happens next. A pause. I've been where you are, Elena, willing to sign anything to save someone you love. The implication hung in the air between them. Who did you lose? She asked softly. His eyes flashed amber, then blue, then brown again. Everyone. They drove for hours, the city dissolving into suburbs, then rural landscapes, then wilderness. Elena watched the transformation through the window, her mind struggling to process everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. The notebook rested in her lap, its contents both written in her hand and completely foreign to her. Where are we going? She asked finally, breaking the heavy silence. A threshold place, Dominic replied, his eyes fixed on the winding mountain road ahead. Somewhere between realms, where we'll have some protection while we work. The car's interior cycled between warm and cold with his breathing. Elena had stopped noticing. The temperature shifts, her body adapting to the strange rhythm. You keep saying we, she observed. But this is your job, isn't it? Collecting on this contract? Dominic's hands tightened on the steering wheel. In the fading daylight, she could see the crystalline patterns forming more prominently across his skin. Beautiful, fractal structures that looked like frost, but glowed with inner fire. It was. Until I met you. His voice carried that dual quality again, as if two slightly different versions of him were speaking in perfect unison. Now I'm reconsidering. Why? He glanced at her, his eyes cycling through colors. Because you didn't know what you were signing. Because what's happening to your sister is a miracle that shouldn't require such a steep price. Because... He stopped abruptly. Because what? Dominic shook his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is finding a way out of this contract that doesn't destroy you. The road narrowed, climbing higher into the mountains. Trees pressed close on either side, ancient pines that seemed to lean inward, watching their passage. As the last light faded from the sky, Elena noticed something strange. The stars overhead were wrong somehow. Too bright, too close, arranged in patterns she didn't recognize. We're crossing over, Dominic explained, noticing her gaze. The threshold space exists partially in your world and partially in others. The sky always shows it first. They rounded a sharp curve, and suddenly a structure appeared ahead, a cabin built of rough stone and dark wood, perched on the edge of a cliff. No lights burned in the windows, but the building seemed to glow faintly from within, as if the materials themselves contained trapped moonlight. This is yours? Elena asked as they pulled up to the cabin. It belongs to neither world fully, which means it belongs to me. Dominic cut the engine. I've spent centuries creating places where I can exist without complications. The word hung, heavy with unspoken meaning. Elena followed him up a narrow path to the front door, which swung open at his approach without being touched. Inside, the cabin was larger than it appeared from outside. A fire leapt to life in a stone hearth as they entered, casting warm light across sparse but comfortable furnishings. Books filled every available surface, stacked on tables, lining built-in shelves, piled beside a worn leather armchair. You'll be safe here, Dominic said, shedding his coat. Without you, his frame seemed both more substantial and somehow less human. His shoulders carried a tension that made Elena think of folded wings. How long will we stay? Until we find our answer. The arbitration is in 2 weeks, but time works differently here. He gestured to the notebook she still clutched. May I? Elena hesitated, feeling strangely protective of something she couldn't even read. Eventually, she handed it over. Dominic settled into the armchair, opening the notebook with reverent care. As he studied the pages, his eyes shifted rapidly between colors, sometimes glowing so brightly that Elena had to look away. Can you understand it? She asked. Parts, he admitted. I know the original language, but this is different. It's as if you've written in a dialect I've never encountered. More ancient, perhaps, or simply unique to you. How can I write in a language I don't know? Dominic looked up. The conscious mind forgets what the soul remembers. Some humans, very few, carry echoes of the original language in their souls. Most never discover it. But you... He trailed off, studying her with newfound intensity. You don't just carry echoes. You speak it fluently in your unconscious state. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire. And that's why they want me. This ability. Yes. His gaze returned to the notebook. The contract you signed. I believe it was created specifically for you. designed to capture your gift. But why would I sign it? Even sleepwalking. Why would I agree? Dominic turned a page, then stopped, his expression changing. For her, your sister. He held up the notebook, pointing to a series of symbols. This section, it details the exchange, your linguistic gift for Lucia's complete healing. Elena's heart contracted painfully. I sold myself to save her. You offered a piece of yourself, Dominic corrected gently. The most valuable piece you possess. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Outside, the two bright stars pressed against the windows like curious observers. You said there might be another way, Elena said finally. A loophole. Dominic closed the notebook. Every contract has conditions, limitations. The key is finding the exact boundaries of what you promised. He hesitated. But to do that, we need to access the part of you that understands this language. You mean I need to sleepwalk again? Not exactly. He set the notebook aside, leaning forward. I believe I can help you access that knowledge consciously, without the dissociation of sleep. But it would require, he seemed to struggle for words, a connection between us. Elena's wrist tingled where the symbols had appeared. What kind of connection? A temporary bond. I would tether my consciousness to yours, guide you into that space between waking and dreaming where your knowledge resides. His voice grew careful, measured. It's intimate, and not without risk. What kind of risk? The crystalline patterns across Dominic's skin intensified, spreading up his forearms. My nature is divided, half celestial, half infernal. Being connected to me means exposure to both. The angelic half could overwhelm your mind with light. The demonic half could burn through your defenses. And if that happens, at best you'd be left with memories that aren't yours. At worst, he looked away. Your mind could fracture. Elena paced to the window, staring at the impossible stars. Do we have any other options? We could try traditional translation methods, but that would take months, perhaps years. We have 2 weeks. The weight of the situation pressed down on Elena. 2 weeks to save her life. 2 weeks to find a way out of a contract she'd signed with her own blood and breath without knowing. This connection, she said, turning back to face him. Have you done it before? Something like pain flickered across Dominic's features. Once. A very long time ago. What happened? She survived the connection. His voice grew distant. She didn't survive what came after. The implication hung in the air between them. Elena thought of Lucia in her hospital bed, growing stronger even as Elena's own fate hung in the balance. She thought of the collector with its shifting face, of contracts written in the language of creation itself. Let's do it, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. Create the connection. Dominic stood, approaching her. Slowly. In the firelight, his eyes cycled through colors more rapidly, settling finally on a luminous amber that seemed to glow from within. Once we begin, we can't turn back, he warned. The bond, once formed, will remain until we either break it intentionally or, he didn't finish the thought, or until one of us is gone. Elena completed. I understand. He raised his hands, palms up, revealing the intricate patterns that now covered his skin entirely. Crystalline structures that shifted between frost and fire. Then place your hands on mine and don't let go, no matter what you see or feel. Elena took a deep breath and placed her palms against his. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming, bitter cold that gave way to searing heat, back and forth in rapid pulses that somehow didn't damage her skin. Close your eyes, Dominic instructed, his dual-toned voice washing over her. And remember, Elena, no matter what happens, what you see, what you feel, I'm right here with you. As her eyelids fluttered closed, Elena felt the cabin dissolve around her. Dominic's hands remained her only anchor as she fell backward into darkness, the symbols from the contract suddenly visible behind her eyes, glowing, pulsing, alive with meaning she could almost grasp. His voice followed her down. "Hold on to me. The descent is always the hardest part. Falling. Endlessly falling through layers of consciousness, each one thinner than the last." Elena tried to scream, but her voice scattered into fragments of sound that swirled around her like glittering dust. Only the pressure of Dominic's hands against hers remained constant. Cold, hot, anchoring her to something solid in this dissolution. Then, abruptly, the falling stopped. Elena found herself standing in a vast library that couldn't possibly exist. Shelves stretched upward beyond sight, spiraling in impossible geometries. Books bound in materials she couldn't identify filled every surface. Some glowed, others whispered, and a few seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, flickering between locations with each blink of her eyes. "This is your mind." Dominic's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Or rather, how your consciousness interprets the repository of language within your soul. She turned to find him standing beside her, but not as she knew him. Here, his duality was fully visible. His right side radiated soft golden light, skin like burnished bronze, eye a pure luminous blue. His left side was shadow and ember, skin etched with glowing crimson fractures, eye a deep amber that burned like banked coals. Where the two halves met along his center line, they blended in a constant, shifting dance of light and dark. "You're seeing my true form," he explained, noticing her stare, "or as much of it as your mind can safely process." Elena looked down at her own hands, expecting to see some change, but they appeared normal. "Why do I look the same? This is your mind. You appear as you know yourself to be." He gestured to the endless library around them. "What matters is that you're now conscious in the space where your gift resides." Elena approached the nearest shelf, running fingers along book spines labeled in scripts she recognized from her studies: Sumerian cuneiform, Linear B, Proto-Sinaitic, alongside others she'd never seen before. "Each volume contains a language," Dominic explained, following her. "Not just vocabulary and grammar, but its essence, the way it shapes thought, the cultural context that birthed it, the emotional resonances of its sounds." Elena pulled a book bound in what appeared to be thin sheets of clay. The title was written in ancient Akkadian, a language she'd studied for years. As she opened it, words floated from the pages, surrounding her in three-dimensional script that shifted and rearranged itself. "I understand all of this," she whispered. "Even parts I never formally learned. Your conscious study only activated what was already here." Dominic's dual-tone voice resonated through the impossible architecture. "We need to find the original language, the one you write in while sleeping." They moved deeper into the library, passing shelves containing languages Elena recognized from her academic work. Eventually, the familiar scripts gave way to increasingly strange texts. Books bound in materials that shifted between states of matter. Volumes that opened into miniature dimensional spaces. Scripts that moved like living things. Across their pages, "These are languages no human should know," Dominic said quietly. "Yet they're here in your mind. How is that possible?" "That's what we need to discover." They reached a circular chamber at what felt like the heart of the library. At its center stood a pedestal holding a single book, bound in what appeared to be solidified light and shadow woven together. The book pulsed with a rhythm that matched Elena's heartbeat. "There," Dominic said, his voice hushed with something like reverence. "The original language." Elena approached cautiously. The book seemed to react to her presence, its pulsing growing more intense. "What do I do?" "Open it. Read it. The knowledge is yours, even if your waking mind can't access it." She reached for the book, her fingers trembling. As they made contact, The binding dissolved around her hands, pages riffling on their own until the book lay open. Symbols rose from the pages, the same ones from the contract, the same ones that had appeared on her skin. This time, they made sense. "I can read it," she breathed, wonder and terror mingling in her voice. It's not just a language. It's more like direct meaning, pure concept without the filter of words." "Yes," Dominic confirmed. "The original language doesn't describe reality, it shapes it. Each symbol is a command, a binding, a truth made manifest." Elena let the symbols flow around her, through her. Understanding bloomed in her mind, connections forming and expanding with dizzying speed. "The contract. I can see it now." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "I offered my gift in exchange for Lucia's healing. But there's more. So much more." The library around them shuddered. Books fell from shelves, pages tearing loose to swirl in sudden violent currents of air. The carefully ordered architecture began to crack, revealing glimpses of other realities through the fissures. "Elena," Dominic's voice sharpened. "Focus on me. You're going too." Deep, but she barely heard him. The original language consumed her attention, revealing layer upon layer of meaning. The contract wasn't just about Lucia. It was about me, about what I am. Her voice no longer sounded entirely human. "I'm not supposed to have this gift. It's a mistake, an aberration." "Elena," Dominic gripped her shoulders, his touch burning cold and blazing hot simultaneously. "You need to step back from the book. Now." "I can't. I need to understand." Tears streamed down her face, though she wasn't aware of crying. "I signed the contract because I thought it was just about saving Lucia. But I was really agreeing to be corrected, removed, because I shouldn't exist as I am." The fissures in the library widened. Through them, Elena glimpsed beings of pure light and pure darkness, watching with countless eyes. Waiting, their attention fixed on her with terrible hunger. "They're coming." Fear finally penetrated her fascination. "They know I'm here, that I'm conscious." Of the language. Dominic stepped between her and the widening cracks, his dual nature flaring, light and shadow extending from his form like great wings. "You need to close the book. Release it. Now." Elena tried to pull away, but her hands seemed fused to the pages. "I can't." "Yes, you can." Dominic's voice softened despite the chaos surrounding them. "Find the boundary between you and the language. It's there. A seam where your consciousness ends and the knowledge begins." She closed her eyes, focusing inward. There, a thin line where her identity ended and something vast and ancient began. She pushed against it mentally, creating separation. The book in her hands grew heavier, more solid. "That's it," Dominic encouraged. "Remember who you are, your name, your sister, your life." "Elena Reyes," she whispered. "Linguist, sister to Lucia, daughter of Isabel and Miguel." With each word, the book's hold weakened. Finally, she managed to close it and step back. The library stabilized. Fissures' ceiling closed. The swirling pages settled, returning to their shelves. "We need to leave," Dominic said urgently. "They've sensed you. The conscious use of the original language has drawn attention." "Did I find what we needed? About the contract?" Elena's thoughts felt scattered, fragments of the ancient language still echoing in her mind. "We know more than we did." Dominic took her hands again. "But we need to return now, before—" He never finished. A final crack split the air between them, and through it reached a hand, not human, not anything that could exist in physical reality. It grabbed Elena's wrist where the symbols had appeared, its touch burning through layers of mind and soul. She screamed, the sound tearing through the fabric of her mental construct. The library dissolved around them in a cascade of falling books and crumbling architecture. "Hold on to me," Dominic shouted, his grip on her other hand tightening painfully. "Don't let go." Elena felt herself being pulled in two directions. Dominic anchoring her to her body, the other presence trying to drag her elsewhere. The pain was beyond anything physical, a tearing at the fundamental level of her being. Then Dominic did something unexpected. He pulled her against his chest, wrapping both arms around her. Where his body touched hers, the boundary between them blurred. His dual nature, light and shadow, cold and heat, flowed into her skin. "Forgive me," he whispered against her hair. "There's no other way." A searing sensation spread from the point where their bodies connected. Not painful exactly, but overwhelming in its intensity. Elena felt something change, a permanent alteration as Dominic's essence merged with her own. The presence trying to claim her recoiled, its grip faltering. The last thing Elena saw before consciousness fled was Dominic's face, split perfectly between radiance and darkness, a single tear tracking down each side. She awoke on the floor of the cabin, gasping for air. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Dominic knelt beside her, his appearance human once more, though his skin was paler than before. "What did you do?" Elena's voice was raw, as if she'd been screaming for hours. "What happened?" "I marked you." Shame and determination warred in his expression. "I created a bond between us, deeper than the temporary connection I'd planned. It was the only way to pull you back." Elena looked down at her wrist. The contract. Symbols were still there, but now they were overlaid with new marks, crystalline patterns like those on Dominic's skin, shifting between frost and fire. "You said marking was permanent," she whispered. "It is." His eyes, steady brown now, the shifting colors stilled, met hers. "Part of me lives within you now, and part of you within me. We're connected in a way that can't be undone." "Why would you do that?" "Because they would have taken you." His voice broke slightly. "The entities behind the contract, they felt you accessing the language consciously. They tried to claim you early, before the arbitration." Elena struggled to sit up, her body feeling simultaneously foreign and more intensely her own than ever before. "The contract. Did we learn enough?" Dominic helped her to the couch, his touch gentler now, as if afraid of causing more pain. "Yes, and it's worse than I feared. The contract wasn't designed just to take your gift, Elena. It was designed to take you entirely, because you shouldn't exist as you are." "What does that mean?" "It means," he said gravely, "that you're not entirely human, and someone very powerful wants to ensure you never discover what you truly are." The words hung in the air like physical things. Not entirely human. Elena stared at the crystalline patterns moving beneath her skin, identical to Dominic's but somehow harmonized with her own flesh. They didn't feel foreign. They felt like they belonged. "What am I then?" Her voice emerged steadier than she expected. Dominic moved to the hearth, stirring the embers back to life. The renewed flames cast his profile in sharp relief, half illuminated, half in shadow, mirroring the duality she'd seen in his true form. "The contract contained phrases I've never seen before," he said. "Terms about containment and reversion. Your gift with the original language isn't something you developed or inherited. It's fundamental to your nature." He turned to face her. "I believe you're something that hasn't existed for millennia. Something both sides feared enough to erase from history." Elena pressed her fingertips against her temples, trying to sort through the fragments of knowledge still echoing from their journey into her mind. "In the library, when I touched that book, I saw things, felt things." She struggled to articulate the experience. "Like memories, but not mine. Vast spaces, beings of light and darkness, words that created reality as they were spoken. Echoes of creation itself." Dominic nodded. "No human should have such memories." "But I'm not Nephilim either, am I? Not like you." "No." He settled on the couch beside her, careful to maintain distance. "Nephilim are born of the union between celestial beings and humans. We carry the duality in our blood: angelic grace, human frailty, and often darker elements. The fire popped and hissed. Outside, those two bright stars pressed closer, as if listening. When I marked you, Dominic continued, I felt something respond within you, something that recognized my nature and welcomed it. His eyes searched hers. That shouldn't happen. Humans resist the marking. Their bodies fight against the foreign essence. But you absorbed it as if completing a circuit. Elena looked down at her wrist, where the contract symbols intertwined with Dominic's crystalline patterns. These new marks, what exactly do? They bind us together, create a shared essence. He hesitated. It means they can't take you without going through me first, but it also means that we're connected, permanently. Yes. The word carried weight beyond its single syllable. I can sense you now, your emotions, your physical state. If you're in danger, I'll know. If you call for me, I'll hear, across any distance. Elena closed her eyes, turning her attention inward. There, beneath her thoughts, she felt him. A presence both foreign and intimately familiar, cold and heat in perfect balance, light and shadow intertwined. I can feel you too, she whispered, like an echo of myself, but different. She opened her eyes. Does this change the contract? My obligation? It complicates it. Dominic rose, pacing the small room. The marking creates a prior claim. They can't simply take you now without addressing the bond first. A hint of his dual-toned voice emerged as emotion colored his words. But it also means I've violated my orders. My employer expected me to deliver you, not claim you. Your employer. Who exactly are you working for? Dominic's pacing stopped. A broker of sorts. Someone who negotiates between realms. They commissioned me to investigate the contract and retrieve what was promised. And now? Now I've made myself a target as well. His expression hardened. But I've also given us an advantage. The arbitration will have to acknowledge the marking. They'll have to hear both of us. Elena stood, wobbling slightly as new awareness flowed through her body. The marking had changed her in subtle ways. Her senses seemed sharper, more attuned to the threshold space around them. She could perceive the boundaries of the cabin now, the places where reality thinned. We have 8 days until the arbitration, Dominic said. We need to use that time to understand exactly what you are and how to protect you. And Lucia? Is she truly healed, or was that just bait? The contract is binding. Your sister received what was promised. Complete healing. That part has been fulfilled. Relief and washed through Elena, so powerful that Dominic visibly reacted to it, his hand rising to his chest as if feeling the emotion himself. You'll need to learn to modulate, he said with a slight smile. Strong emotions will bleed through the bond until you learn to control it. Sorry, she murmured, though she wasn't really. The connection felt right somehow, like finding a piece of herself that had been missing. A shadow passed over the windows, too large, too deliberate to be clouds. They're searching, Dominic said, his voice low. The marking conceals us for now, but we should move by morning. Where? Deeper. There are places between worlds where even they can't easily follow. He approached her slowly. But first, you need to rest. The marking takes a toll, and your mind has been through tremendous strain. Elena wanted to argue, but exhaustion suddenly crashed over her, bone deep and overwhelming. I don't think I can make it to a bedroom. Without hesitation, Dominic lifted her, his touch sending cascades of sensation across her sensitized skin. The crystalline patterns beneath both their skin brightened where they made contact. The marking enhances physical awareness, he explained, carrying her to a small bedroom off the main living area. It will settle with time. He laid her gently on the bed. As he straightened, Elena caught his wrist. "Stay," she said simply. "I don't want to be alone with all of this." Conflict flashed across his features, but he nodded. "I'll be right here." He settled into a chair beside the bed. In the silvery light filtering through the window, Elena studied his face, so human in form, yet carrying something ancient and other behind his eyes. "Dominic," she murmured, sleep pulling at the edges of her consciousness. "What did you mean when you said you lost everyone? When I asked who you'd tried to save?" Pain shadowed his expression. "A very long time ago, I had a family. A life that almost felt human." The crystalline patterns beneath his skin flared brighter with emotion. "I made a contract to save them from a plague. I offered anything, everything. What happened? The terms were imprecise. They took my payment, years of servitude, but interpreted saving my family in their own way. They were removed from the plague's path by being taken directly to the afterlife." His voice grew distant. "Quick deaths while I was bound elsewhere, unable to reach them." Horror and empathy washed through Elena. Through their new bond. She felt the echo of ancient grief, a hollow space within him that had never healed. "So you knew," she whispered. "You knew exactly what I was risking when I signed for Lucia." "Yes." His eyes met hers. "That's why I couldn't let them take you. Not like that. Not without understanding the full terms." His hand moved toward hers, hesitated, then completed the connection. Where their skin touched, the crystalline patterns aligned and brightened. "Rest now. Tomorrow we begin." Preparing for the arbitration. As sleep claimed her, Elena retained awareness of Dominic through their bond. His vigilance, his concern, and beneath it all, a dangerous, fragile hope that neither of them dared to name. She dreamed of the library again, but different now. The architecture had changed, incorporating elements of crystal and shadow. The books of language still filled endless shelves, but they were organized differently, connections forming between tongues that had previously been separated. In the dream, Elena moved with new confidence through the impossible space. The original language no longer overwhelmed her. Instead, she approached it with cautious respect, understanding its power without being consumed by it. She wasn't alone. Dominic's presence moved with her, sometimes beside her, sometimes within her. The boundary between them fluid in this dreamscape. "They're changing," she observed, examining the contract symbols now embedded in her dream self's wrist. "Evolving. The marking is integrating with the contract," Dominic's voice replied from everywhere and nowhere. "Rewriting terms." She studied the new configuration. Is that possible? Can a marking override a soul contract? Not override, transform. His presence condensed, taking form beside her. Here in the dream, his duality was fully visible again, light and shadow perfectly balanced. The contract bound you. The marking bound us both. The two bindings are negotiating. Elena reached for the book of the original language. This time, it didn't try to consume her. "I think I understand. The contract was designed to take me because of what I am. Something neither side wants to exist. But the marking makes me part of you. And you already exist in the in-between. You're already acceptable." "A loophole," Dominic agreed, "but not a perfect one. They'll argue the marking came after the contract and therefore doesn't supersede it. Then we need more." Elena opened the book. Symbols, rising around her like a constellation of meaning. "We need to understand exactly what I am and why they fear it so much." Through their shared dream space, she felt Dominic's concern. "That knowledge may be dangerous, Elena. If even I don't know what you are, then we'll discover it together." She turned to him, determination flowing between them through the bond. "Because whatever I am, I'm done being afraid of it." Dawn arrived as a strange, muted glow that bore little resemblance to sunrise. In the human world, Elena woke to find the crystalline patterns beneath her skin, glowing softly in the half-light, pulsing gently with her heartbeat. The chair beside her bed was empty, but she felt Dominic's presence nearby, a constant awareness humming through their bond. She found him in what passed for a kitchen, his back to her as he prepared something in a stone mortar. The muscles beneath his shirt shifted in ways that weren't entirely human, suggesting structures hidden beneath the surface. "You're awake," he said without turning. "How do you feel?" "Different." Elena studied her hands, the delicate tracery now visible beneath her skin. "Lighter somehow. More connected." Dominic turned, his eyes cycling briefly through colors before settling on amber. "The marking is stabilizing, integrating with your existing nature. Whatever that might be," she murmured. He approached, carrying a cup of steaming liquid that smelled of herbs and something else. Something not quite of earth. "This will help strengthen you for what comes next." Elena accepted the cup, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a cascade of sensation through the bond, his concern, his determination, and beneath it all, a careful restraint that felt like a dam holding back something vast. "You're shielding," she observed, taking a sip of the bitter liquid. "Controlling what comes through the bond." A slight smile touched his lips. "And you're already perceiving more than you should be able to. Most humans take months to develop such awareness after marking. But we've established I'm not entirely human." "No." His expression sobered. "And today we need to discover exactly what that means." Outside, the strange landscape of the threshold space stretched away from the cabin. A forest that wasn't quite a forest. Trees that weren't quite trees. The sky above held both sun and stars simultaneously, as if day and night coexisted. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, as they stepped onto a path that seemed to form itself beneath their feet. "To the confluence." Dominic's voice carried that dual quality again, especially pronounced in this place. A point where multiple realities intersect. If answers about your nature exist anywhere, we might find them there. They walked in silence for a time, the landscape shifting subtly around them. Elena noticed that where she stepped, small blooms of crystalline frost appeared momentarily before dissolving. An echo of Dominic's nature now, manifested through her. "The marking," she said finally. "You've done it before, haven't you? Not just the one you mentioned." Through their bond, she felt his hesitation before he answered. "Yes, it's part of what I am. The ability to create connections between realms through bonding. Most Nephilim have a particular function. Mine is to bind and bridge. And the others? The ones you marked?" Pain flickered through the bond, quickly suppressed. "Gone. Humans are not meant to carry such marks." For long, Elena absorbed this in silence, the implication clear. "But you think I might be different?" "You already are." He stopped, turning to face her fully. "The mark has taken root in you in a way I've never seen before. It's as if your nature was waiting for it." Before she could respond, the path beneath them dissolved. The world seemed to fold around them, reality pleating like fabric, until they stood in a clearing unlike any place Elena had ever seen. The confluence. 7 different landscapes collided here, each maintaining its integrity for a few yards before blending into its neighbors. A desert of black sand, a garden of crystal flowers, a stretch of ocean with water that flowed upward, a cityscape of impossible architecture, a void filled with mathematical equations given physical form, a forest of trees with roots in the sky, and finally, an expanse that appeared to be pure sound given visual dimension. At the center of it all stood a structure that hurt Elena's eyes to look upon directly, a temple or altar that seemed to exist in all 7 realms simultaneously. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice sounding strange in the differential acoustics. "A neutral ground. No single reality claims dominance here." Dominic moved forward, the crystalline patterns beneath his skin now fully visible, glowing with inner light. It's also a place of knowledge. The histories of multiple worlds intersect at this point. They approach the central structure. As they drew closer, Elena realized it wasn't a temple at all, but a vast archive. Shelves and cases containing objects from all 7 realms, each labeled in scripts she somehow understood, despite never having seen them before. "What are we looking for?" she asked, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information surrounding them. Any reference to beings who naturally speak the original language. Dominic was already scanning shelves, his movements precise and focused. Entities who exist between realms. Anything that might explain what you are. Elena moved through the archive, drawn to a section where the shelves seemed to be made of solidified sound. The objects here weren't physical exactly, but concepts given form. She reached toward one that resonated with something deep within her, a spiral of light that hummed with meaning. As her fingers made contact, knowledge flooded her mind. Not overwhelming like her experience with the original language book, but clear and structured. Information about beings who had existed before the separation of realms, who spoke words that shaped reality, because they were part of the fabric of creation itself. "Dominic," she called, her voice vibrating strangely in the acoustic anomalies of this section. "I found something." He was beside her instantly, his presence wrapping around her protectively as he sensed her discovery. Together, they absorbed the knowledge contained in the spiral, images and concepts rather than words. In the beginning before separation, there had been beings who were part of the primal creation, not creators themselves, but conduits through which creation flowed. When reality fractured into separate realms, most of these beings chose sides, becoming celestials or infernals or elemental forces. But some refused to choose. They remained within the seams of reality, maintaining the connections between worlds, speaking the language that bound all things together. Translators. "That's what I am," Elena whispered, certainty blooming within her. A translator, born human, but carrying the essence of those original beings. Dominic's expression reflected wonder and growing concern. Translators were thought to be extinct. The celestial and infernal realms agreed to discontinue their existence. They were too unpredictable, too powerful. Why? What threat could they pose? Balance. His voice lowered. Celestials and infernals maintain power through separation, borders, boundaries. Translators cross those boundaries effortlessly. They can restructure contracts, redefine terms, even alter the fundamental agreements that keep the realms distinct. Understanding dawned on Elena. That's why they want me gone. I'm a threat to the entire system. Yes. Dominic's hand found hers, their crystalline patterns aligning and brightening. And it explains why the marking took so strongly in you. My nature as Nephilim, existing between worlds myself, resonates with your translator essence. A tremor ran through the confluence, subtle but unmistakable. The 7 landscapes rippled, as if disturbed by an unseen force. "They've found us," Dominic said, urgency edging his words. "The search has reached even here." Elena clutched the spiral of knowledge, not wanting to leave it behind. To her surprise, it dissolved under her touch, the information it contained flowing into her, integrating with her understanding. "We need to go," Dominic urged, already pulling her toward the edge of the archive. "Now that we know what you are, we can prepare for the arbitration, but not if they capture us first." They ran across the impossible intersection of realities, each realm reacting differently to their passage. The crystal garden chimed discordantly. The black desert shifted like liquid. The ocean of upward flowing water parted before them. Behind them, figures began to materialize at the edges of the confluence, forms that weren't fully physical, more like concentrations of intent given partial shape. Collectors, coming to enforce the contract. "They can't follow us through a direct threshold," Dominic called, pulling Elena toward the sound realm. We need to create a doorway they can't perceive. How? Speak it. His eyes locked with hers, blazing with urgency. You're a translator. The original language is yours by right. Speak a doorway into being. Elena faltered, doubt flooding her. I don't know how. You do. His hands gripped her shoulders, the crystalline patterns flaring. Bright where they touched. Feel it through our bond. The knowledge is in you. She closed her eyes, reaching into the place where their essences mingled. There, she found what she needed. The structure of a command in the original language. A word that meant passage and safety and home all at once. Elena opened her eyes, opened her mouth, and a sound emerged that wasn't quite sound. More like reality rippling outward from her intent. The air before them split, revealing a passage that led elsewhere. Now! Dominic pushed her toward the opening, following close behind. They fell through the doorway of her creation, just as the collectors converged on their position. Elena felt the passage sealing behind them, her instinctive command including closure as part of its structure. They landed hard on the floor of the cabin, the threshold space having recognized her intent and brought them to safety. Elena lay gasping, overwhelmed by what she had done. I spoke it, she whispered, awe and terror mingling in her voice. I created a doorway with words. Dominic helped her to her feet, his touch steadying her. You did more than that. You created a doorway they couldn't follow through. Pride and concern warred in his expression. You're remembering what you are. Elena looked down at her hands, the crystalline patterns now flowing in harmony with the contract symbols on her wrist. If I'm truly a translator, and they're extinct, how do I exist? Why am I here now? Dominic's expression grew grave. That's the question we need to answer before the arbitration. Because whatever force arranged for a translator to be born in the human realm after millennia of extinction must have had a reason, Elena finished. A purpose for me. Yes. His eyes met hers, resolve hardening between them through their bond. And we have just 7 days left to discover what it is. The arbitration chamber existed in no realm, and all of them simultaneously. Elena stood at its threshold, her heart hammering against her ribs as she stared into the impossible space. A vast circular room that appeared to be constructed from solidified sound and crystallized intent. 7 thrones arranged in a semicircle faced a single circular platform in the center. Remember, Dominic said quietly beside her, the crystalline patterns beneath his skin glowing with fierce intensity. Speak only truth, but choose your truths carefully. The arbiters aren't bound by human concepts of fairness or justice. The past 7 days had been a blur of preparation, delving deeper into her nature as a translator, practicing the careful articulation of the original language, strengthening the bond between them until it became a seamless conduit of shared strength and understanding. They had discovered much, but not everything. The question of why she existed now, after millennia of translator extinction, remained unanswered. Are you ready? Dominic asked, his eyes shifting through their spectrum of colors before settling into that perfect balance of blue and amber that revealed his centered state. Elena nodded, reaching for his hand. Where their skin met, their shared patterns aligned and brightened. Together, they stepped into the chamber. Immediately, reality compressed around them, as if the air itself had become dense with meaning. On the 7 thrones sat beings that Elena's mind struggled to process. Not physical entities, but concentrations of concept and purpose that merely suggested humanoid forms. 3 radiated light in different spectrums, representing celestial authorities. 3 emanated shadows of varying densities, representing infernal powers. The 7th, seated directly across from the platform, existed as a perfect balance between light and shadow. The mediator. The signatory's approach. The mediator announced in a voice that was less sound and more direct meaning. Elena Reyes, human signatory. Dominic, Nephilim enforcer. The contractual dispute will now be examined. The contract itself materialized in the center of the platform. Not the physical parchment Elena had found in her mailbox, but its true form. A complex, three-dimensional structure of interlocking symbols and commands written in the original language, glowing with power. "The terms are clear," spoke one of the celestial arbiters, its light pulsing with each word. The signatory offered her linguistic gift in exchange for her sister's healing. The healing has been provided. The debt must be collected. Circumstances have changed, Dominic countered, his dual-toned voice perfectly balanced in this place. The signatory was unaware of her true nature when the contract was formed. She could not offer what she did not know she possessed. "Ignorance does not invalidate consent," replied an infernal arbiter, darkness rippling through its form. The signature was freely given. Elena stepped forward, the crystalline patterns beneath her skin responding to the pressure of the moment, glowing more brightly. "I request the right to speak on my own behalf." Surprise rippled through the chamber, a tangible disturbance in the fabric of the space. "The signatory may speak," the mediator granted, its form shifting slightly toward her. Elena took a deep breath, centering herself in the knowledge she had gained. "I signed this contract believing I was offering a linguistic ability, a talent for translation. I did not understand that what I was actually offering was my fundamental nature as a translator." The word hung in the chamber, creating visible ripples in the air. The arbiters stirred, their forms becoming more distinct as they focused their attention. "Impossible," hissed a celestial arbiter. "The translators were ended by mutual agreement. None remain. And yet, here I stand." Elena raised her wrist, where the contract symbols intertwined with Dominic's marking. "I have awakened to my nature. I have spoken doors between realms. I have read the archives at the confluence." A low vibration ran through the chamber. Not quite sound, but the harmonic of multiple realities reacting to her words. "This changes nothing," insisted an infernal arbiter. "The extinction of translators was decreed and executed. If one exists, it must be removed. The contract becomes void," Dominic argued. "If its purpose was to conceal the truth of her nature from her while removing her from existence, that represents fundamental deception." The mediator's form shifted, expanding slightly. "The contract's intent must be examined. Present your evidence of deception." This was the moment they had prepared for. Elena reached into the knowledge that had integrated with her being, finding the specific understanding she needed. "The contract contains embedded commands," she said, stepping closer to the floating structure of symbols. "Secondary instructions hidden within the primary terms." She raised her hand, not quite touching the glowing contract. "May I demonstrate?" After a moment of silent communication among the arbiters, the mediator nodded. "Proceed." Elena spoke a single word in the original language, a command that meant something like reveal and truth simultaneously. The contract structure shuddered, then reconfigured itself. New symbols emerged from within the existing ones, previously hidden layers becoming visible. "These commands," she explained, "were designed to activate upon fulfillment of the contract. They would not simply remove my linguistic gift. They would erase all evidence of my existence as a translator from reality itself. My essence would be redistributed, my memory expunged from all records and minds." Dominic stepped beside her, their shoulders touching, strength flowing between them through the bond. The contract was never about a fair exchange. It was an execution order disguised as a healing bargain. The chamber grew very still. The arbiters conferred in a language even Elena couldn't fully comprehend, pure conceptual exchange beyond symbolism. Finally, the mediator addressed them. "The evidence of hidden intent is compelling. However, the fundamental problem remains. Translators were eliminated from existence by decree of both celestial and infernal authorities. Their power to restructure the boundaries between realms was deemed too dangerous. "I did not ask to be born a translator," Elena said quietly, "but I refuse to be eliminated for simply existing as what I am. There is another solution," Dominic interjected. His hand found Elena's, their patterns flowing together. "The marking I placed upon her binds her nature to mine. As Nephilim, I already exist in the interstices between realms, permitted to exist despite my dual nature." An infernal arbiter leaned forward, shadow coalescing. "Explain your proposal, Nephilim." "The marking creates a permanent bond, a partnership that balances and contains her power. Through me, her abilities can be channeled, regulated." Dominic's grip on Elena's hand tightened slightly. "I will stand as her guarantor before both celestial and infernal authorities." Elena felt what this offer cost him, the freedom he had guarded for centuries, the careful neutrality he had maintained. Through their bond, she sensed his fear, not for himself, but for her. "And if this arrangement fails?" asked a celestial arbiter. "If the translator's powers prove uncontainable, then the responsibility falls to me," Dominic answered simply. "My existence would be forfeit alongside hers." Elena turned to him, shock pulsing through their bond. This hadn't been part of their preparation, this final gambit. "Dominic?" He met her eyes, and in that moment, everything unsaid between them flowed through their connection. His growing love for her, his determination to protect her, his belief that this path, though dangerous, was right. The mediator rose, its form expanding to fill the upper reaches of the chamber. "The arbiters will consider this proposal." The 7 beings merged into a single swirling mass of light and shadow at the apex of the chamber. Elena and Dominic stood in tense silence, their linked hands the only movement on the platform as their crystalline patterns flowed between them. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself," Elena whispered. "It's not sacrifice if it's freely chosen," he replied, his dual-toned voice gentle. "And I chose the moment I marked you." Before she could respond, the arbiters separated, returning to their thrones. The mediator spoke for them all. "The proposal is accepted, with conditions. The translator will remain bound to the Nephilim. Together, they will serve as intermediaries between realms, negotiating contracts and disputes where standard enforcers cannot suffice. Their combined nature makes them uniquely qualified for this role." Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "And my sister?" "The healing stands. The original contract is dissolved. It's hidden. Commands nullified." Dominic bowed his head in formal acknowledgement. "We accept these terms. There is one final matter," the mediator continued. "The question of how a translator came to exist in this era remains unanswered. This anomaly must be investigated. We will seek that answer ourselves," Elena promised. "Then our business is concluded." The mediator made a gesture that seemed to fold space itself. "Return to your threshold dwelling. You will be contacted when your services are required." The chamber began to dissolve around them, reality reconfiguring itself. As the arbitration space faded, Elena caught a final glimpse of the 7 thrones, and for just a moment, she thought she saw an 8th presence, observing from the shadows beyond the semicircle, its form more ancient than any of the arbiters. Then they were standing in Dominic's cabin, the familiar walls solidifying around them. Outside the windows, the strange stars of the threshold space seemed to shine more brightly. Elena turned to Dominic, her heart full of questions and emotions too complex for words. Through their bond, she felt his relief, his lingering fear, and beneath it all, that dangerous, fragile hope now blooming into something stronger. "You bound yourself to me forever," she said softly. "Why would you do that?" Dominic raised his hand to her cheek, the crystalline patterns beneath both their skin glowing where they touched. "Because in all my centuries of existence, I've never found anyone who understood both halves of me. Until now." Elena leaned into his touch, feeling the perfect balance of cold and heat, light and shadow. What happens next? We learn what it means to be what we are, together. His eyes cycled through their colors before settling on that perfect balance of blue and amber. And we discover why a translator was born into the world after so many millennia of absence. Outside, reality shifted slightly, the threshold space responding to their combined presence. The boundaries between worlds grew both stronger and more permeable simultaneously, a paradox made possible by their union. "Whatever comes," Elena said, her fingers intertwining with his, their patterns flowing seamlessly between them. "We'll face it together." "Together," Dominic agreed. And in the original language, the word held meanings beyond simple proximity. A binding, a promise, a beginning without end. In a world that often demands we hide our true nature, Elena and Dominic's journey reminds us that sometimes our greatest strength lies in what makes us different. Through sacrifice, courage, and the willingness to stand against impossible odds, they discovered that even the most ancient powers cannot stop two souls truly bound together. What would you risk to protect someone who sees all parts of you, both light and shadow, and loves you completely? The boundaries between worlds are thinner than we imagine, and the contracts we make, spoken or unspoken, shape our reality. More than we know. Elena chose to rewrite her destiny rather than be erased by it. When faced with your own impossible choices, will you accept the terms given to you? Or will you find the courage to negotiate a new path? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to hear more tales from the spaces between worlds. Your support creates a bridge between storyteller and listener, a contract of sorts, written in the most powerful language of all, connection. Until our paths cross again in the next story, remember that some bonds transcend even the laws of creation itself.